So September is Wills Month, and yes, we keep on harping on about this because while you're watching this, you're probably at work, on your way to work, to make money to keep your family safe. The question is, how safe are they going to be if you are no longer here? Let's be honest, just like taxes, it is inevitable. So how does a beneficiary nomination form actually work for things like your retirement funds and life cover when that terribly sad day does eventually arrive? Maya Fisher-French, hello to you. Let's come and find out how exactly we do this, because you can basically stipulate any retirement benefit to anybody really, but I suppose when it comes to minors, the youngsters in our families, there's a special way of doing this, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think what's important around understanding and why it is Wills Month, and you're quite right, we've been talking a lot about wills this month, and hopefully people go out and actually take one out. But your retirement fund and your life cover actually isn't stipulated by your will. So that's why it's also important that you've got to go and look at that stuff as well. You can't just write up a will because, for example, if you have life cover, even if you've got company, with your company, that may be your only life cover, it gets paid to the person you nominate to receive that money. Only if you haven't nominated somebody at all would it be paid to your estate. But when it comes to your retirement funds, it's actually the trustees who will get to decide how those funds will be allocated. And they will first look at your financial dependence. They will say, do you have a spouse or children that you need to provide for? Even parents, for example, if you are supporting your parents financially, they could have a claim on your retirement fund. So it is important to go and fill out that beneficiary form on your retirement fund so that they have some guidance as to all the people that you need to be considering and taking responsibility for. A really important one, Gareth, is if you have a life partner, maybe you're not formally married, but you're living together, you want to make sure that that person is included on that list. Yes, at the end of the day, the trustees will make the final decision, but it does guide them. And I must tell you, one of the ones that we see a huge mess is often if there's a child in another relationship, there's perhaps a relationship outside the marriage, the trustees have to consider that child. So these are important things that you do need to consider, and these sit outside of your will.
Yeah, it certainly does. We'll talk about the minor and the children at the moment. So I'm not going to tell you why I know this, but always make sure you remove your ex from your life policy when you go through a divorce, by the way. Yeah. Just want to throw that awkward little anecdote in there for you, by the way. Let's talk about the children for a second, because I'm curious. Help me understand. So if there is, and sadly, a child under the age of 18 loses a parent, far too young to lose a parent, it does happen. Does the money go to the child, or does it need to be paid over to a guardian who then administers that money for the child? How does that work? It sounds complicated.
It's extremely important, this, because I think a lot of people don't realize that you cannot give a minor child a large lump sum. They're not allowed to. So what invariably happens is the trustees, in this case, or if it was a life cover company, would have to either they pay to the guardian, but if, especially with the trustees, of the retirement funds, if they feel that the guardian's not financially literate, or they have some concerns as to whether the guardian would actually use the money in the best interests of the child, they have an option to put the funds into something called a beneficiary fund. And this is actually kept for the child until they're 18, and a monthly allowance is paid to the guardian to support the child. And this is specifically in the private sector. So if you work for a company in the private sector, or you have a retirement annuity, if you are a member of the government employee pension fund, that gets paid into a different thing called the guardian fund, which we can talk about another day. But what's interesting to me with the beneficiary fund is what I see is that a lot of parents are quite like this idea. Maybe they're a single parent, they want those funds ring fenced, and the company that generally, the retirement administrator that generally does the company retirement fund, also looks after the beneficiary fund. So they're managing it properly. They will then have a discussion with the guardian. They will work out how much is needed for that child every month, and they'll make sure that the money lasts till the child's 18. So I'm finding a lot of parents saying, well, you know what, I would like to actually nominate the beneficiary fund as for my children. So if something happens to me before they're 18, I would actually like to stipulate to the trustees that rather than paying it to the guardian, that it goes to the beneficiary fund. And you can even opt for your group life cover, not life cover outside the company, but if you have group life cover as part of your benefits, those funds can also be paid to the beneficiary funds. I think, Gareth, these are really, really important things to consider. I come across so many parents who do not have wills, haven't looked at what happens to their retirement benefits. these are your children. You have an opportunity now to go out and make sure that they are looked after if something happens to you.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. You go and work all these years, you make this money, hopefully you've been financially responsible. Something happens to you, and now all that hard work, at least from the financial side, it doesn't benefit anybody at all. And that's why it's such a waste. And it's so easy to do. You can just go onto your banking app. Most apps these days, most banks, you can find it either online or on the app and just start the process. It is Wills Month, it's Wills Week, which is why we dragged Maya Fisher-French back out to come and talk about the importance, especially for the parents out there. Maya, good to talk to you. We'll talk again next week, I'm sure. Personal finance journalist, Maya Fisher-French. It really is so easy to do. You can get it done in the time, at least the application to the bank, in the time it takes you to get a cup of coffee.